Hey guys, it's time we got back to this little Unimog. So for the past few months I've been using this just to do various things around the lot. And I've also been out having some fun with it. Now all of this was mostly to try and figure out what is and what isn't working. It has developed a few more leaks, but other than that, mechanically it's working really well. And I also wanted to see if that big lift that I put in the front, if that was getting in the way when you're going off-road. It turns out it doesn't really matter, unless you're getting into some really deep stuff. But at that point the whole vehicle is struggling, and it's not really the lift that's gonna make the difference. It is actually springtime around here, but somehow it's more winter now than it has been, well, all winter. So let's do a little cold start and get this inside. So, like I said, it has developed a few new leaks, the biggest one being one of the water pipes running up to the heater. That's leaking pretty badly, so I had to block that off. And also some of the old hydraulic hoses have started leaking now that they have pressure in them. And there's a little air leak underneath, but really there's so many little things underneath this thing that just need some attention. But I think instead of trying to go over everything now, I'll just start taking this thing apart so I can get to everything, and then we'll go over it as we put it back together. And the biggest issue with this thing right now is of course the cab, with all the rust that's in that and all the other issues. So I really would like to take that off completely. So we're going to start by taking off the front lift, then we're going to take the bed back off, and then I'll try and figure out some way to lift the entire cab off. kan jeg tage den køler hele. Alright, so now I should have everything disconnected so that I can finally get this cab off. Now of course some of the things that I took off, like doors and windows and whatnot, it wasn't strictly necessary to get the cab off, but it was things that I was gonna take off anyway, so I may as well get it off now just to make it a little bit easier, make the whole thing lighter, and just give myself some more room. Also, I should say that these old round cab Unimogs, they actually do have a tilting cabin. Just like many other bigger cab over trucks, you can tilt the whole thing forward to give you access to the engine and the gearbox and all that stuff underneath. But it's not quite as easy to do on these as it is on some of the newer and bigger trucks, where you just unhook the cab and let the hydraulics do the work. There's a little more to it on this, let me show you. So if you were to do it by the book, first thing you would do was to remove this tube that's running from the air filter box to the intake manifold, and also the little breather tube up here that's also running to the air cleaner. You just take that off as well. Then on the inside, over the transmission, you turn these little levers here. There's one in each corner, and then this whole thing just falls down and it just sits on top of the gearbox. That doesn't follow the cab, so it just stays down there. Then out here on the front, you would actually mount a set of little stops, like a set of little legs for it, because otherwise this whole thing can actually tip all the way over and smack into the floor. So you would have these little stops. I don't have those, so I can't show you, but it's really just a little rod that will just sit and support the cab on this edge when it's fully tilted over. Then you'd come down here and loosen up this lower joint on the steering column and disconnect that from the steering housing. That's what I was just doing, but that was a little difficult to film. Once that's all disconnected, then the front attachment point of the cab, that's just this little bushing right here. So you just loosen up the nut on either side, just enough so that it can move, and you leave it like that. Then back here, get some light, you have these two legs, well, one in either side of course. They are connected to the cab, and down here is where it's connected to the frame, and there's just a bolt in the bottom of that. So if you remove that bolt, you can then lift the whole cab up out of these mounts. And like I said, there is nothing to help you actually lift this. So on the back, there's this little metal loop here that you can hook a hoist to. and then you just start lifting the whole thing up. And then once it is all the way up and sitting on those supports you mounted in the front, there's actually another piece of pipe that would go up and support the cab in its fully open position so that you can safely work underneath it. Anyway, what I was really trying to say with all that is that everything that is connecting the cab to the rest of the vehicle, other than that pipe from the air filter box, it's all mounted out here in the front with hoses and wires and whatnot, so that the whole thing can tilt without you having to disconnect everything that has fluids in it. The only thing that's a little further back is that the steering columns on the steering housing, and that's why you disconnect that as well, because otherwise it would be pulling the steering column down as you tilt the cab. But now the cab should just be sitting on its 3 mounting points, the one out here and the 2 in either side. So I'll try and move it back to where I have that hoist in the ceiling. I'll hook that up to the rear end of the cab, and then I'll use my engine crane here to try and hook onto the front, and I'll see if we can make that work to lift this thing off. I really should invest in some kind of lifting machinery. Now, I've really only had it in the shop for a couple of weeks, but in that time we've gone from really cold blizzard snow weather to this really quite nice warm spring weather. Anyway, that is fully separated now. It's going to be a lot easier to get to all the things that I need to get to down here, and it's going to be a lot easier to get to all the rust work that I need to do with that cab. Also, I could just say, in case someone is wondering why I never disconnected the throttle, that is because it's never connected in the first place. The pedal that you're actually stepping on in the cab, that is just pushing on a little lever on the other side that is then pushing this pedal on the engine, which applies the throttle. So it's never permanently connected. Reason for that is because if you did that, the way the cab and the frame is moving when you're going off-road, when it's twisting a lot, it would be coming on and off the throttle, and that's really not what you want if you're in some tricky stuff. So that little piece of floor over here on the driver's side that was really bad, that actually just fell out when I lifted the cab. But anyway, I think I'm gonna try and move this cabin a little further back in here so that I can get the rest of the vehicle back here. And I'll probably make some kind of stand, something to raise it up a little so it's going to be a little more comfortable to work on. So I'm going to try and see what I can come up with for that. Alright, so I'm going to end this one here because now I'm going to have to clean all this up and figure out what I actually need for this and what I got to do to it. And I got to get that cab moved and get that set up before I can even work on it. So you'll be seeing some of all that in the next few videos. Whenever they're ready. It might take some time doing all this stuff, but I'll be uploading as soon as I have something to show you. So thanks for watching this one, and we'll see you.